Yeah, it's weird when you see firsthand, like your friends or family, like how money affects them once they get a taste.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Everyone's liberal till they get rich, right?
Yeah.
Then they become socially liberal, fiscally conservative.
This morning I had a terrible argument with myself, but the makeup sex was incredible. Every set before I go on stage, I say, Jesus, allow me to reflect your light, conduct your warmth, and radiate your joy to this crowd. That takes me out of me and into service. I love those audiences, especially the girls. Johnny Dark, the great Johnny Dark, had the funniest line when he performed in Korea. He said he accidentally got in front of a crowd of Koreans who didn't speak any English except for 3 words. You, not funny. The great Johnny Dark.
Make it loud for Argus Hamilton.
Here with the legendary comedian, one of the OGs of the Comedy Store, and a guy who I'm very lucky to call my friend here on the podcast. Please welcome the great
Argus Hamilton.
Argus Hamilton to the show.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Great to be here in Las Vegas.
I know, it's so cool that we get to work together in Las Vegas. We're always at the Comedy Store together. So,
Do you gamble?
I did last night.
Really?
Yeah, I turned a $20 bill into $248 in the slot machines.
Really?
Yeah, I got super lucky last night.
Did you leave with it?
Yeah, I left with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I it was up around 300, and then I kept it going a little bit, and I was like, my caps, if I get down to 250, I'm pulling it out, and that's what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the last time it was like in the summer of 2020 during the George Floyd protests.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the Comedy Store when the protest came walking down Sunset Boulevard past the Comedy Store. And in solidarity with 6 black comics at the Comedy Store, I knelt, took a knee, until I rolled 5 straight 7s, and then they ran me off.
You always get me with your Mr. X. I always am believing you with your stories, and then it turns into a great punchline with a joke. I love that.
That's why we're here.
I know.
You know, people don't pay $25 to hear how sincere I am. You know,
That's very true. That's very, very true. Well, yeah, it's you're one of those guys that, and this is a compliment to you. When you have to follow somebody like you at the Comedy Store, it's work. And that's a good, that's a compliment. Like,
I don't really understand why they still have me going on second now. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because ever since the pandemic, I've connected with millennials and even some Generation Z. I really connect with millennials.
Yeah.
And it's the same way we baby boomers connected with Rodney Dangerfield in the 80s.
Sure.
Okay?
He was your guy.
I'm their naughty uncle, Lord Hamilton. And I teach them how to raise hell as long as they can before they have to get well.
It's crazy the impact on the crowd, like in those main rooms.
Yeah.
Like how hard I see you killing. Like I'm in the back sometimes pacing. I'm like, all right. And then I'm fortunate to bring you up. I prefer that.
Yeah, sure.
Bringing you up, then I have to follow you. But yeah.
Well, I used to have to follow you from time to time in the original room.
Yes.
And when you would get down on your stomach and do this bit about sex, no one could follow it. And I think you stopped doing it just to be nice to the other comedians. I mean, because it was murder.
Yeah, it was the bit was how women turn into like werewolf-like creatures around karaoke, and how you can take them to bed afterwards. And it was basically me acting like a woman, getting sexed in many different positions. And yeah, it was pretty like pretty much every Kama Sutra position in the book. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while, so I was glad that it worked out, because you're one of those guys who you came up and you know everybody in the game, like at the Comedy Store. You're one of the original people who helped like Mitzi like kind of like open it up with like the lineups and stuff as far as like the Comedy Store, the Westwood Comedy Store. You talked about the Dunes here in Vegas, and I kind of wanted to pick your brain and have you share some stories about over the years.
Mitzi and her husband Sammy were extraordinarily lucky because they opened this room on the Sunset Strip, the Comedy Store. It was a little 135-seat room in May of 1972. Now, this little room was part of a huge nightclub building that had been called Ciro's back during the heyday of Hollywood. All the movie stars came. And it had a 450-seat main room and a 100-seat belly room upstairs. But Mitzi had subleased, her and Sammy, this little 135-seat room in May of 72. That's really important because as I was just talking to Liz Stone, our tremendous comedian here tonight, the 70s was the time of the 3 network television, okay? And in May of 72, it so happens that's the month and the year Johnny Carson moved The Tonight Show to Los Angeles from New York. And suddenly, this entire sub-generation of comedians that had developed in New York in the late 60s had to come out to Los Angeles. And there was the Comedy Store waiting for them. And you had all these brilliant comics that were disciples of Robert Klein, really, and David Steinberg. They were disciples of these guys, and they were right there and ready, okay? So you had all these ready comics from New York. You had sitcom stars like Red Fox and Welcome Back Kotter, Gabe Kaplan were established, and Rodney Dangerfield would always drop by. So they got off to a running start in 72. It was hot right away.
Yeah.
I didn't get there till 76, but the first generation of them, starting in 76, 77, were doing The Tonight Show. And The Tonight Show was the golden door to success.
Oh, yeah.
And
what were you doing? Had you been doing comedy elsewhere up before 76? Like, what was your timeline?
I was a
with
campus
that?
star at the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Okay. In 2 or 3 different ways. I emceed all the campus shows, but more importantly, I had a political humor column of jokes in the school newspaper, in the Oklahoma Daily. And it was a 25,000 circulation newspaper. Everybody on campus read it. I had my picture 3 inches by 2 inches in the paper for 8 semesters next to my column. And I parlayed that into a campus show at a bar on Campus Corner in Norman called Trivia Night, where I gave out free pitchers of beer for answers to trivia questions over the PA system and punchlines to jokes. So that's why it took me 5.5 years to graduate from OU, because I was having such a good time.
Yeah.
I was the social chairman at the ATO house, planning all the parties, and as long as my classes were in the afternoon, we were fine. But I majored in Coors. I had a 3.2. And due to my high intellect, I was allowed to graduate after only 3 terms: Nixon, Ford, and Carter's. So anyway, I had a ball. And so
you've always been a partier.
Well, but one night, I didn't know if I was going to New York or LA. But one night we're sitting in the ATO house, fraternity house living room, where ATOs were sitting around watching Johnny Carson. And Sammy Davis was the guest. And he said, Johnny, I saw this young comedian at this new place called the Comedy Store. I want to bring him out and have him perform. Johnny said, fine. This guy came out. It was Freddie Prinze. He just blew up the room there in Burbank at NBC. And the next thing you know, he had his own sitcom. And that's pretty much the way it went with everybody. You would kill on The Tonight Show. And then you would, as I was just telling Liz Stone, you graduate to either your network deal or your movie deal, or you decide to keep doing talk shows until you get to host one.
Right.
I mean, pretty much the 3 avenues. And so when I got there in 76, it was a big year because the height of the baby boom was the year I was born, and we were all getting out of college that year and the year before. Okay. And so we had a huge pledge class of comics that auditioned for Mitzi Shore in 1976.
And what was the audition process like back then? Because it's changed quite a bit over the years for, you know, the different talent coordinators and stuff like that. What was your audition like for Mitzi?
Terrified everybody.
Yeah.
There were comics that were doing the Tonight Show that were nervous when she was in the room, but she had so much power.
Mm-hmm.
She determined whether or not you were going to have a career or not.
Yeah.
That's how powerful she was. And
did you ever see anybody that she drastically changed her mind on? Like that she was very cold on?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary Shanley.
Really?
Yeah. She treated him like a little bitch, okay, for about 4 or 5 years. She made him, from 74 to 79, she made him do audition. And what it did was it forced him to become a successful TV scriptwriter for sitcoms in that time. And he just got better and better and better. And so by the time she finally relented and made him a regular, he was ready for the Tonight Show, and he blew it out. And the next thing you know, he was guest hosting, you know, and he was on his way. But that was a prime example. And later on, she claimed that she was making him sweat on purpose to make him better, and she did that to a few people too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but what Mitzi did was, because we had the Comedy Store Westwood as well as the Sunset. I was telling this to Liz Stone earlier. The Westwood Comedy Store was a 235-seat room that she would send us young baby boomers over. She would like in about 2 months, she approved me, Robin Williams, Michael Keaton, Marshall Warfield, Arsenio, Howie Mandel, Bob Saget, Ollie Joe Prater, Vic Dunlop, Bill Kirkenbauer. I mean, a tremendous pledge class in 76.
Yeah.
And Mike Binder would come along a little later that year. But she would send us over to Westwood.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was talking earlier to Liz, the Westwood Comedy Store had a beer and wine license, which is important because I meant 4 food items, beer and wine license. Mitzi did not have to buy a liquor license. Now, what this meant, this is why you would have been great back there, is that 18-year-olds could get in. Because it was just beer and wine.
Okay.
It's like a restaurant.
Right.
That's what it is, a restaurant.
Yeah.
Play
sure.
along, everybody.
Yeah.
And so it became the hip nightclub, not only for young baby boomers living on the West Side, but also USC, UCLA, Taft High School, El Camino High School, Beverly High School, Uni High School, the whole West Side of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That was the place. And Mitzi's intention was for us to go over to Westwood, you know, and become one day ready for Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just telling Liz, after 3 years at Westwood, we were ready for the Tonight Show before we were ready for Sunset. And the Westwood Comedy Store was a 235-seater, brick walls. It's where Jim Carrey developed, where Louis Anderson developed, and Roseanne would come in there and blow the roof off. Sam Kinison developed there. He was pretty developed in Houston, but he got his following at Westwood.
That young cult following that was like ready to follow him to the end of the earth.
Yeah. He didn't have to deal with a bunch of appalled adults at Sunset. He had young people at Westwood.
The rebels are ready to revolt against everything that's going on. Yeah.
And the same place, in the same way, Andrew Dice Clay took off at Westwood.
Okay.
Because he would have appalled all the politically correct people on the Sunset Strip.
Sure.
But Westwood, hey, free speech.
Anything goes. Yeah.
And so I forgot to mention Dice was in our pledge class too. So, and you know, he wound up filling up concerts. I mean, theaters, field houses.
One of the biggest of all time. Yeah.
And so, we were really in a golden age. We really were. And
you just saying just your class, like, you know, for anybody who's listening. He's talking about classes very much like high school, where the same people who are on the same lineups as you all the time that are going up around you, that's like your class of comedians or who you started with, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And somebody told me something back then that turned out to be true. He said, your peers, okay,
right,
will get you a lot more work than any agent ever will.
I 1,000% agree with that. I've the stuff that I've gotten as far as like even TV bookings and different things like that, or like the little movie stuff I've done here and there, it's from referrals from comedians saw me and know me, and they're like, I think Jeremiah would be good for this, and they vouch for me because they've seen me perform for years, and that's.
But now, when you came up, Mitzi was in decline, and
I only met Mitzi once.
Okay,
yeah,
because but you really met her through osmosis, through Tommy,
yes,
the talent coordinator, because she thoroughly trained Tommy to look at comics like she did, and he would last until 2013, and by that time you were on your way.
Right. Yeah.
What was it like auditioning for Tommy?
Well, what was strange is he never passed me before.
What?
He never passed me before he left. So I was like, he was telling me for like a year or two that I was going to be next on his passing list.
You and Erica Rhodes.
Yeah.
The same thing. He was just about to pass her.
There's a couple comics that he was telling, and I had to re-showcase for Adam Egget, and I didn't get it until my third showcase. And the way that the showcases work now, there is a year between the showcases.
Really?
Yeah.
So you went out on the road and became a monster act and came back and were forced to do, what, 5 minutes?
Yeah, for the audition, it was like an 8-minute set or something like that.
And you were able to kill on the road for 30 minutes.
Easily. Yeah, no, it was one of those things where because I got turned down, I was like, okay.
That's the Shanling treatment.
Yeah. So the third time,
Shanling.
I had such an undeniable set that it like, he had to pass me, yeah.
I'm still waiting for Erica Rhodes to come back in because she was really good,
She's great.
too.
She's a great joke writer, too.
And, but she's probably making too much money on the road to bother.
Yeah, I'll run into her in New York and stuff like that, and we'll hang out in New York. She's great.
So who would you say was in your class, your pledge class?
It would have. So I was kind of in between a couple of the classes, but some of the people who got passed around me were like Jessica Michelle Singleton, Sandra Yocolano. The class, like, that was kind of like how I'm in between. It's like Jamar Neighbors, Willie Hunter, Jade Catapretta, Gerard Carmichael.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys were like kind of the class above me.
Gerard making a lot of noise coming in.
Oh yeah. He was one of those comics who immediately comics would come in to watch him because he just had that, that quality.
He had me open for him on his HBO special.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I tried to tone down my southern accent the best I could. Because, he drew a great crowd.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But Spike Lee in the back, I didn't fool him.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I said, hi, Spike, I'm Argus Hamilton. I know who you are. Come on, I gave jokes to Paul Mooney. Be nice to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's what's so cool about someone like you who's really been there and you really know the history of the Comedy Store. You've seen so many comics come and go that were the classes after you, and you've been like a rock at the Comedy Store for so many years where it's always cool for me to see your name on the lineups because I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good show and Argus on it.
Thanks. Well, as I was talking earlier, as I said to Liz, it was a graduated form of development back then. It was very structured. Mm-hmm. And you either got your TV deal, you got your movie deal, or you decide to hang in there till you got your talk show.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And I'd never in my life wanted to be anything but a talk show host. Okay. And as soon as I started exploding on the Tonight Show, I did a bunch of them and just blew the roof off. However, it's a small town. And they knew, the whole town knew, and they would spread it at the Improv. Well, Argus is funny. Too bad he's a cocaine addict, alcoholic. And, that doesn't help you, with the NBC brass.
Sure.
Johnny may love you, but NBC knows about you too.
As far as moving the next chess pieces around and stuff like that. Yeah.
And so I stalled around until Leno and Letterman cornered who was going to host, the two network talk show. They cornered it. And so by that time, I was 2 or 3 years sober, but I couldn't get in at NBC. So I went over to Fox, did that late night talk show that Arsenio had and was leaving. I blew the roof off that one. And then the then owner of Fox said, well, we'd give it to Argus, but he reminds me too much of Johnny.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I mean, why would you want somebody that reminds you of Johnny who's held service for 30 years? I mean, why would you want someone like that? So anyway,
Yeah, it's crazy.
so
Somebody's
I
successful
took it
that
like
it
a man,
works, yeah.
and I wound up syndicating a bunch of jokes every day in the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, 5 days a week, 13 jokes a day, and it's in newspapers all over the country. And in the 90s, that got me a lot of banquets, gigs.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And then I decided to outweight everybody, and so now I've got a showrunner, I've got the Comedy Store behind me, and we're pitching a talk show that I had at the Comedy Store called Argus Hamilton's Comedy Store Tonight.
Oh yeah, you had me on for an
That's
episode,
right.
which is it was very
We're
fun.
pitching that to Big Fox in about a month.
Awesome.
Because there's a hole there. And since I'm a centrist comedian, I'd be the only centrist comedian hosting a late night talk show.
Right.
And I'd have plenty of opportunity to plug it with appearances on Fox News, since it's the parent company,
Right.
Fox. So we got plans to do it. I've got a great showrunner, a former partner at APA, and then Peter Shore, the Comedy Store. So
Yeah.
we're going for it.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love joking about the news. I love making people laugh and say, that's a fair joke. I like people saying
Right.
that's
Yeah,
fair.
where on both sides, wherever you land politically or whatever your viewpoints are, is like, hey, he's hitting it from both sides. It's
Exactly.
funny. It's
Besides,
just funny.
I don't have
funny.
a dog in this fight. I'm a royalist. Hey, people laugh and think I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I say this. I say my line of Hamilton's: we lost the English Civil War, we lost the American Revolution, we lost the American Civil War, and the war on drugs. I fought for Columbia. And so, your little democracy here, have fun with it.
Yeah.
I tease it from a distance.
Sure. Yeah. I got to ask you about just more stories about the store, because it's truly fascinating to me just to see like the different changes over the years and stuff like that of people coming and going. I know we got to wrap up here in a little bit because we have another show to do.
Yeah, I can wait.
I know, right? But when you're at the Comedy Store and you're coming up, who were your guys who you were like, these are my favorite guys to watch from the back of the room?
No doubt about it. Paul Mooney.
Yeah.
Paul Mooney. He was the great black descendant spiritually and comedically from Dick Gregory.
Mm-hmm.
These were serious black comics,
Yeah.
really funny stuff. And just at a crucial time, Dick Gregory was great in the 60s when civil rights was really roiling. And then Paul Mooney would benefit in the 70s because that was the decade of real free speech, as witnessed by Blazing Saddles, Red Fox, the original cast of Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Animal House. These are all National Lampoon people, the National Lampoon magazine in the early 70s. Really free speech. And Mooney rode that. And I would say, and he helped pull Richard Pryor out of the ditch when Richard cracked up on stage in Las Vegas doing cute little song impressions and stuff. It's not Richard at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally got to Richard. Mooney picked him up by the bootstraps and turned him into what I always call Dark Twain. That's who
Dark
Richard
Twain.
Pryor was, Dark
Okay.
Twain. And Red Fox would let them write scripts and stuff like this, but all the time, Mooney was great. He was the one. And we would close the Westwood Comedy Store like at 1 o'clock
Mm-hmm.
and race over to Sunset, by about 10 after 1, just to catch Paul Mooney, because he would always close the show in the original room.
Okay.
And he was magnificent.
So he was. So they always call like it the Kennison spot at the Comedy
That's
Store.
it.
Was he?
Kennison inherited that spot
He inherited from Mooney.
from Mooney.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, because Mooney would go on to great things
Sure.
on the road and stuff.
Then
but
that slot opens up.
They start opening it up, and it was Kennison's. I think Eddie Griffin would try to go on after that, but
Yeah.
but and he certainly had the material,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't catch on like Kennison, and he wasn't revered like Mooney was.
Right. Yeah. Who would you say for you was your least person to least favorite person to follow, or your like most difficult? Would you say?
There's no doubt about it. Sometimes over at Westwood, the acts wouldn't show up, and so we doormen who, if we weren't emceeing that show, let's say I was emceeing the first show but not the second.
Yeah.
The act doesn't show up after Gallagher or Neka Schultz, you're having to follow smashed watermelons or just food all over the stage. With where are you from? I'm from Oklahoma. Our pedestrian lights flash mosey and don't mosey. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
You can con us with that line at 9 o'clock, Argus, but come on.
I had to do one gig where I had to follow fireworks on the 4th of July.
Oh, no.
That was, I was like, I'm literally following fireworks.
Yeah.
Everybody looking up at the sky, yay, taking their pictures, celebrating the holiday. And I'm like, hey guys, are you ready for some comedy? And then I did that, and then I brought up Jeff Ross. It was at a county fair.
As fast as you could.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting
I
one.
love, my favorite comic is Bill Burr right now. You know?
He's amazing.
And somebody finally showed me that video of him screaming at
Versus
that Philadelphia
Philly?
crowd. That had to have been a Promethean moment for me.
It's one of the things that set off his career, like that really like put him into the lore that you're talking about. Like, have you seen this Bill Burr video? Like that kind of thing where people started revering him, like looking at him in a different way. He was already like so funny and established at that point, but like, and you know, he was defending, you know, the story behind that.
No.
He was going after the crowd because they weren't being respectful to Dom Irrera, who had gone on. Yeah. So he was like, he because everybody loves Dom, and Dom's a legend.
Everybody loves Dom.
Everybody loves Dom. And they're like, he's like, you're going to do that to him? Like, so he went off on that Philly crowd.
And the next thing you know, because Mike Binder was telling me this, he is now headlining at the Royal Albert in London.
Yeah. Just these huge venues.
And then he filled up Fenway Park. He's a Boston comic who filled up Fenway Park.
What a dream for a little Boston kid to come to fruition.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And you don't have to share the stage with 8 other guys, you know?
Yeah.
It's just you.
It's just you.
No Red Sox.
It's wild. Yeah, exactly. I'll ask you a couple more questions, and then we're nearing our showtime. But so I got to ask you about a couple of you ran into and you've worked with a couple of my favorite comedians who I grew up on that are big influences on me. Can you share any Jim Carrey stories that you may have had?
Yeah. Jim arrived from Toronto in 82. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I was sitting next to Mitzi when he went on stage on Monday night. And Howie Mandel or somebody had told Mitzi, give this guy a full set. You know, this guy's special.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, you know. And so he went up there and did this perfect act of impressions, just perfect act. Just destroyed the crowd. Mitzi made him an absolute regular right away. Mm-hmm. So with this act of perfect little impressions, he, the biggest management firm in town, Rollins and Joffe, took him on, and they gave him this silly little sitcom with no audience, based on his ability to do cute little impressions, and it was failed, and he was stuck with this cute little act that always killed. It was always perfect little impressions, but it wasn't him.
Yeah.
So he talked to Mitzi about it, and Mitzi said, hey, I've got an idea for you. All right. I'm going to put you on with Damon Wayans late at night at the show. You're either going to follow Damon or Damon's going to follow you. Right. I want you to just go up there and be yourself. Okay? Don't worry, I'm going to give you'll be up every night. Just be yourself up there. And suddenly, next to Damon up there, he started turning into the monster stand-up comic he became. A monster. Just a combination of wit, brilliant impressions, energy, joy, youth, looks. I mean, he just had it all. Okay. And the next thing you know, the Wayans brothers get a network deal in Living Color. He's the designated white boy, and off we go.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there was a story that when his father died, he put a check for $1 million in his casket.
Yeah, he wrote himself a check for, I think it was $6 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and then and
his father had been a street performer in Toronto or something.
Yeah,
at the subway.
And then it came to fruition, and when he did like Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask all within a year, and he made that money all within that year.
And you know, and Generation X got an idea of what the country must have been like when Jerry Lewis first took off, because it was that same kind of
that same kind of energy and the physicality and
and wit, you know, too.
Yeah,
he had it all.
His special, and a lot of people are unfamiliar with it, but he has a half-hour special that I believe he filmed in Canada. It's called Jim Carrey's Unnatural Act. It's my favorite special. I love it.
Mitzi had both him and Paul Rodriguez on our very first show at the Comedy Store Dunes Hotel in 1984. We opened in April, and we were there for 8 years. But Jim was already hot then, and so was Rodriguez, and they agreed to do the opening night. You know, and took off from there. But Mitzi adored him.
That's awesome. Do you have any Robin Williams encounters or stories that come to mind when you hear the name Robin Williams?
Well, Robin and I were the same pledge class.
I love that.
We did the new Laugh-In show together in the fall of '77. People think Mork and Mindy made him. George Slaughter, the producer, made him. The guy he's the biggest guy in Beverly Hills, tremendous rich, and he had executive produced Laugh-In, Real People. But in the fall of '77, he had gotten a network deal to bring back Laugh-In. And so George came to the Comedy Store to cast it. And he came into the door with his writer, Digby Wolfe from England. And I was emceeing the show, but also greeting at the door. I said, George Slaughter, you're here. He said, this is my writer, Digby Wolfe. I said, oh, you're from England? He said, yes. I said, what political party are you? And he said, well, I'm a liberal. I said, they haven't had a prime minister since David Lloyd George. And Digby said to George, hire this man as a writer, okay? Because this young man reads, and anyone who can read can write. Next thing I know, I'm making $1,200 a week in 1977.
Oh, yeah.
With a cocaine habit. Oh, man. You talk about let's saddle up and ride. Okay. Yeah. And so he came in to see Robin. And Robin had these dirty fingernails, a cowboy hat, hair coming out. And Robin had a tremendously funny act. It was filthy, full of 4 impressions, a redneck guitar player, 2 gay guys doing Shakespeare, a Nadia Comaneci impression, and I forget the 4th thing he did, but he just brought down the house. Bill Kirchenbauer had been the thunder boomer at Westwood till Robin arrived in September. And then Robin just destroyed. And Mitzi immediately sent him down to the Comedy Store La Jolla, and he was with Ronnie Kenny, and everybody knew right away he should do the Tonight Show. But he went on the beach walk on Pacific Beach with Ronnie. They tried to come up with 6 clean minutes for him, and he couldn't do it.
Really?
So he would do these little local talk shows while going on while waiting to go on that fall on Laugh-In. Well, stupid NBC puts all this talent. I do the news on the show. Robin was the star. And idiot NBC put it up against Monday Night Football.
Yeah, how are you supposed to succeed against
what
that?
are you doing? This had Friday night 10 o'clock written all over it.
Right.
And no, NBC puts it up.
And what year was this?
Fall of '77.
So this is already when it's proven that Saturday Night Live is working. It's a hit show. It's on in the late night on Saturday, and they're trying to put it on a Monday.
And all the baby boomers are staying up late on Friday night watching Don Kirshner's rock concert. When you have a comedian on that, everybody knows where it's at.
Yeah.
Okay. It gets stupider. Okay. So Laugh-In, all this talent, NBC cancels it after 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And guess what they replace it with? The Richard Pryor specials. And Richard Pryor And Paul Mooney cast Robin Williams and me and about Marshall Warfield, about 6 or 7 others of us. And we're all these sketch players on the Richard Pryor specials. And Richard has these immortal black artists from the 1940s, Billy Eckstein. He was the Black Sinatra.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it is fantastic. These sketches that we do, 7 of them, just tremendous against Monday Night Football.
Right.
That show could have run 10 years on Friday night at 10 o'clock. And NBC, the idiots, just put it on against Monday Night Football.
Do you have access to any of those old sketches anymore?
Yeah, you can Google them.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just Google, Richard Pryor and Robin Williams, NBC, Richard Pryor specials.
Okay.
Sketches from Richard Pryor specials.
Right.
And you see Robin Williams playing Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
And you see me getting a big laugh where Richard Pryor just brings down the house with this sketch where he plays the first black president. And it's such a crazy idea in 1977. People are laughing before he opens his mouth. Okay? And Richard's taking questions from this, that, and the other. And I just stand up. I say to him, Buford Johnson from the Mississippi Clarion. He said, "Sit down." And the place just went wild. I get this long, 8-degree take to sit down. But Monday Night Football, they covered all 13 weeks of Monday Night Football.
Right.
Wasting the most talent NBC ever flushed down the toilet.
Yeah. That's so wild.
But luck always comes if you got talent. And the next thing you know, Gary Marshall, who's riding high with the biggest hit on TV, Happy Days, they decide to have somebody coming in from outer space, because that's a big deal in the 1950s, outer space.
Sure.
All these Mars attacks movies. So they bring in a guy from outer space, and Gary comes in and sees Robin, and then Gary asks his young daughter, like 6 or 7 years old, what would be a good name? She said, Mork. And a 6-year-old daughter of Gary Marshall named Mork. And next thing you know, Robin's making $50,000 a week with a cocaine habit. It all has a happy ending.
Sure. I'm sure those parties were pretty crazy.
Oh gosh. And of course, I'd go to rehab every November from 81 to 86.
Yeah.
I'd stay sober for 9 months. Okay. And then football season would arrive. And it's time to refight the Civil War. And then finally, in November of 86, I got well for good when I was given no choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, Argus, we could literally talk for hours about like your life and your history and your influence, like in the comedy scene and with the Comedy Store. But you're literally about to go on stage in about 10 minutes from now, so I want you to be able to collect your thoughts for a moment. But what
I'd like your viewers to know is, okay,
yeah,
I want you to come see this guy because this guy's a genius. You are a genius up there, and I saw it from the very start. You've got that same Robin thing going with you. I mean, you really have it. And I want you all to see him whenever you can. If you're on the road or if you're in LA, you can come see both of us.
Yeah, come see us at the Comedy Store. That's high praise, Argus. I really appreciate that.
I mean it, man. You had me with that woman having sex after the singing at
the night of karaoke.
Karaoke. Oh, God, you've got to yell karaoke when he's on stage. Make him do it.
I'll have to do that. I'll have to bring that back for you some night.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. God, it's funny. And trust me, I'm a snob. That's funny. All right.
Well, you can follow Argus on social media. He puts out new jokes all the time, and he writes for publications across the country. And come see us at the Comedy Store performing together on the lineups in the main room or the original room of the Comedy Store. And love you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. And I want to apologize to the Tropicana for welcoming everybody to the Dunes on Monday night.
For sure. You welcomed everybody to the Dunes. And Harry was back here with me, Harry Basil, another comedy legend of the state. He goes, did Argus just call it the Dunes? He goes, oh, God.
Next thing you know, he's texting Joe Napodi telling on me.
Yeah.
Oh, we got an Argus story.
All right. Thanks a lot, Argus.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
You're great.